Hello, I'm Glyn from Philips and welcome to this tutorial on the V60 non-invasive ventilator. It's intended to be split up into chapters and it's going over the basics of the V60. So we're going to be looking at what it's all about, how to set it up, how to change the settings, alarms, various things like that. So you can click into whichever particular module you wish to look at. But I'm going to start off by just introducing the V60 first, what it's used for, and a little bit about the technology. So, as we've said, called the V60, it's the new version of the BiPAP Vision that was, so some of you may have those. And what it is it has its own internal blower. It's a very, very high flow blower. It can do 200 up to about 260 litres of flow can be generated from this device. So there's no need to put a separate air supply into this machine. Now, because the flows are so high, that means no matter how sick your patient is, because this is intended for use in hospital on the acutely sick patient, so they will be having very high peak flow airway demands, well, the machine will meet that. That won't be a problem. And it's very relevant when it comes to the technology, which we'll come back to. So, round the back, you have an oxygen hose, which quite simply you plug into the oxygen outlet in your ward, wherever you're using it, and now it'll draw in whatever oxygen is required to the mixture that you've set up, the percentage of oxygen that you want. So I've now actually just described a CPAP device, high flow, high oxygen. So it can be used as a standalone CPAP device. It is of course being used for BiPAP as well, but it is also licensed to be used invasively. So you could use it on a tracheostomy tube, ET tube, so you could use it for weaning from your ventilator, as well as of course preventing people being intubated and supporting their breathing. But its primary use, of course, is CPAP and BiPAP, which is what we'll be talking through in this tutorial. It can be used anywhere, intensive cares, A&E departments, respiratory wards, and indeed it is. So, very good piece of kit to be used wherever somebody has very high respiratory demands. Little bit about the technology first. It has something called Autotrack. Now, it's very important to remember this because it will be useful when we come back to something in the settings later. In simplicity, the Autotrack does as it sounds. It automatically tracks a patient's breathing, and it will do that on a breath-to-breath basis. So it detects when somebody is breathing in, and it detects when they're breathing out. So in BiPAP, it needs to detect that so that it can push the flow up to the inspiratory pressure that you've set, and then it needs to detect as the patient is breathing out so it can come back down to the expiratory flow. It is really, really sensitive. All the patient needs to do is draw a spontaneous breath of just 6 mils, a little teaspoonful of air. Now by doing that, the machine says, right, okay, that's a breath, I will go up to the inspiratory phase, inspiratory pressure, and then of course it will drop down to the EPAP following when it detects that they're breathing out. Very, very sensitive, and the important thing to remember is it will let them breathe in whenever they want, and it will let them breathe out whenever they want. So that's putting the patient in complete control of their own breathing, rather than the other way round of getting a patient to synchronize with a machine. And because it is so sensitive, their work of breathing, which is very, very important, very, very high in the initial stage, will be greatly reduced because the machine, of course, will be very sensitively detecting this breathing in and out and respond and give support as required. Part 2 is at the same time, every single breath, it's not only looking for when they breathe in and out and letting them do that, it's looking for leaks around the mask. So in other words, it's going to utilize the flow capabilities that it has if needed. So when it comes to fitting a mask, which can be very, very uncomfortable for a patient, it doesn't need to be. You need to place the mask on gently, and if there is a bit of leak coming from around the mask, the machine will tolerate up to 60 litres of flow per minute, which can leak out of the mask and still function. As a rough guide, you probably need it at high single figures, 10, 20, 30 litres of flow would be absolutely fine. And of course, you get a number of that on the screen, which we'll go through in the monitored section, monitor parameters. So, good leak tolerance, meaning you don't need a tight mask. Very sensitive technology, letting them breathe in and out when they require.
Innovation and you. Philips.